Another subject that cropped up that I thought we could talk about for a while is clutches. Every engine's got one. They don't get a lot of loving, but they do get a lot of abuse. So if I go through how the clutch works, you all might be a bit more sympathetic to clutches in the future. Okay, so there's basically three components in a clutch. You've got a cover plate, a centre plate, and a bearing. So if we show you each bit, I'll just tease this one off again. Sits on these three dowels. If I take it completely off. Right, okay. What we've got is we've got the engine flywheel. So this is bolted to the crankshaft, so this is going round at engine speed. So whilst that's going round, if the engine's doing 1,000 revs, if you're sitting there idling, you're going to be doing about 1,000 revs. If you go to pull away, you might be at 1,500 or so. So this is going round fairly quickly. This disc here presses up against there. Now this is attached to basically your road wheels. So this goes out to the gearbox, takes the drive to the gearbox, and ultimately goes to the road wheel. So this, if your road wheels are doing nothing, the reason you've got to have a clutch is half the components are doing 1,000 revs, then the gearbox and that's doing nothing. So somehow you've got to get the thing off the line, and that's where this friction plate comes in. So this is sitting here doing nothing, rubbing up against the flywheel, and the clutch cover, which I showed you earlier, is basically a great big spring. So the way it works is that this steel plate in here will move forwards and backwards, squashing the plate against the flywheel. So when that's on there like that, this is the release bearing, which is basically attached to your foot. So that's spinning. So this is stationary, this is all spinning round, and when you push your foot on the clutch, it slides this bearing backwards and forwards, depresses these great big springs, and basically unsquashes the disc plate from the cover plate. So you've got two friction sides. I'll get the disc back again. So the clutch sits on there like that, so it's going to rub on both sides. So it's going to skid on this, and it's going to skid on the flywheel. Right, so this is where you get to the bit where you feel sorry for the linings on this. So this is doing 1,000 revs, this is doing nothing. When you put your foot on the clutch, it releases it. When you let your clutch up, it squashes that against the flywheel and it twists it, which basically will wear down this lining. Now, years ago, these used to be made of, it's what's called an organic clutch. So it's made of, used to be made of asbestos, but obviously that's outlawed now, but it's a sort of fibre. To be honest, I don't know what they're made of now, but it's a fairly tough, a bit like brake pad material. And you might have heard people say, well, when it's raw, when you're down to the rivets, these little rivets that hold it all together, when you're worn down to the rivets start to gouge chunks out of your flywheel. This is obviously a brand new one. So that's on there, and it's spinning round. So when you're sitting there at 2,000 or 3,000 revs and you're going off from the lights fairly briskly, you can imagine the heat and the amount of forces that go through this poor little clutch plate. And a lot of the flywheels, you can see on this one, there's some very slight heat cracks. And if you get the flywheel too hot, it cracks. And if you get the clutch cover too hot, or if you really go for it, this thing just falls apart. The linings come off. Now, when you get to the modern cars that have got launch control, when you sit there at sort of 5,000 or 6,000 revs and just dump the clutch, the forces that go through this poor little clutch plate are just ridiculous. I don't know how they put up with it or whether they just explode. But they did say that when the 360s and 430s came out, you got literally about 5 or 6 launches, and then that was it, the clutch was gone, which is quite believable. I'm surprised it lasts one, to be honest. What you get on race cars is that it's called a paddle clutch. I'll see if we can pull up a photo. And it's got, rather than having organic material around here, it's got metal, phosphor bronze, sort of metally type pads. So you get 3 or 4 pads, usually 3. And it's a much stronger material. They squeak and squawk a bit, but it does mean that you can dump the clutch at 6,000 RPM for competition use, and it doesn't all fall apart, but they're not much good for road use. One of the options that can be done, and Ferrari do this, rather than having one disc plate with 2 friction surfaces, I'll put that over there. If you put 2 plates in. I'll put some gloves on because this is out of a real car that we've just literally pulled out, so it's all covered in dust and it's quite horrible stuff, is if you put multiple plates on. So if you put one friction plate on, then another spring cover, and you can see this, how hot it's got. This is out of a Testarossa that we're just doing. All these heat spots here is how hot this plate's got. It's almost melted the metal. And then put another disc plate on. You can see here there's all hot spots all around there. And you can see this one, it's taken the lines out and it's nearly worn down to the rivets. If you look at that part there, the little grooves that were in the outside have gone, so he's nearly on the rivets on this one, so this one's just about had it. But it does double up, it does give you multiple surfaces, so you've now got 4 friction surfaces as opposed to 2. Now F40s run multi-plate clutches, Testarossas, the later cars run this setup, because obviously the big flat 12s and stuff, there's a lot of car to get moving and you'd just be wearing clutches out every 5 minutes. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an insight to clutch, and now you're all going to feel sorry for your clutch plate and be a bit more gentle at the lights next time. See you on the next one.